This is Principles of Management, and the session is on managerial decision making. The chapter on managerial decision making provides some powerful insights on how people approach circumstances, both clear and unclear. The process is anything but arbitrary. First, decision making is a process of identifying problems and recognizing opportunities and resolving them. A decision is a choice made among available alternatives. In the morning, you may have a cup of coffee, something that involves a decision of whether to add sugar or cream or perhaps something else, and most people brew their coffee the same way every day. This is an example of a programmed decision. It is something based on a pattern of behavior. At times, though, we're confronted with something entirely new, a situation that is in some way different or undefined or unstructured. And decisions in these sorts of circumstances are termed non-programmed decisions. Interestingly, programmed decisions are based on rules, which were derived from experience or calculation. The point at which we may have decided on the best way to have our coffee was a non-programmed decision at that point. After the preference was established, it became programmed. The decision-making process begins with what is that we already know and a picture of what it is that we want to achieve, the goal. If all of the data that a person would need to know in order to make that decision is laid out in front of the decision maker, this is said to be a situation of certainty. Such situations are rare. Far more often, full information about the available alternatives, future events, and their consequences is unavailable, and this simply describes a situation of uncertainty. The chance that outcomes associated with the available alternatives is subject to any degree of variation from its target, whether better or worse than expected, is termed its risk. Suppose, though, what can be achieved in a situation cannot clearly be envisioned. What is being investigated is purely exploratory. This is a situation of ambiguity, because goals cannot clearly be articulated and alternatives cannot be clearly defined, and information about the likelihood of outcomes is completely unavailable. At times, things can be so utterly vague that attempts at decision-making will end up completely frustrated. There are three models of decision-making: the classical, the administrative, and the political models. The classical model is based on economic outcomes. It is rational and logical and embraces a utilitarian view of ethics. Under this system, the manager is trying to accomplish a known and accepted goal, and in doing so, devising alternative paths through their accomplishment and gathering all of the data needed to assess them using established criteria. This is a normative model in that it focuses on the process. Decision-making is optimized if the process of making decisions follows this design. But in the real world, there's not enough time to calculate every detail of every alternative. And so people act rationally, but within limits, like time constraints. The administrative model describes how managers actually do make decisions. Decisions based on goals that are vague, and sometimes intentionally so, and conflicting. While the process for making decisions is generally rational, it is not absolutely so. And given that the time resources that can be devoted to making decisions is limited, managers tend to find solutions that are good enough, or that meet some minimum standard or criteria. They may be based on intuition, which is a quick and often subconscious assessment of alternatives. And the term Herbert Simon, who used the word administrative behavior, came up with was called a new word, satisficing. The third model is the political one. This methodology is information gathering, although the sources of information are secondary rather than primary. But it's also about preparing a management team for implementation. It involves asking for input at the same time the project manager is creating an informal alliance among managers to support that specific goal. It recognizes that organizations can be broken into divisions or functional areas with individual goals that sometimes conflict, that information can be ambiguous or incomplete, that limited time and resources can be devoted to each decision, and that decisions about goals and their hierarchy are often the result of a bargaining process among managers. The decision-making process follows a consistent pattern. First, there's a diagnosis of a problem or the recognition of an opportunity in which managers analyze the causal factors associated with the situation being analyzed. Following this, solutions should be proposed. Creative solutions should be encouraged and considered, along with what it would take in order to implement them. The selection of the best alternative to be made should be done on a utilitarian basis. What produces the greatest good while causing the least harm? The selected program has to be planned out and implemented, and then its results should be objectively analyzed. Things not going well provides more of a learning opportunity than things running smoothly. The feedback mechanism provides the basis for course adjustments, or even the revamping of an entire system. Managers also have personal decision-making styles. A directive style is used by managers who prefer simple, clear-cut solutions to problems. This is the classic keep it simple directive. Other managers like to gather as much data as is available and analyze it in a search for the best possible decision based on the facts. Still, other managers prefer a conceptual style, gathering data from multiple sources, relying on data from people as well as systems. People using this approach recognize that things may be objectively true, but facts are interpreted by and acted on by people who have varying points of view. Truth can be a matter of perspective. Finally, managers who adopt a behavioral style focus almost exclusively on individual perceptions of things and gather their data from assessing how people feel about a situation. This style is appropriate for situations where factors such as motivation and interest play a key role in the outcome of a venture. Managers, in fact everyone, have some code embedded in them that can skew their thinking toward bad decisions. Initial impressions, for example, are sometimes stronger than subsequent data received. People tend to want to feel good about past decisions they've made and tend to avoid owning up to mistakes. They also tend to believe in things and view decisions through a belief filter. Also, upsetting the status quo can be very disruptive. It can change patterns and behaviors and assumptions about what works and what doesn't. At times, it's difficult to be calm and level-headed, and some of the worst decisions are made when emotions are involved. And too much success can be a bad thing. It convinces people that they are correct more often than they actually are. In concert with this are two additional concepts. One is called groupthink. This is a situation where people acting in groups tend to want to belong and be accepted by everyone else in the room, and so they avoid expressing contrary opinions. One of the cures for this is diversity in the workplace. The second is taken from a work by Bazerman called escalation of commitment. If the outcome of a prior decision is producing a subpar result, was it because some aspect of the implementation underperformed? For example, was there too small of a marketing budget for the product to take hold? Or alternatively, was the product simply a bad idea? People tend to believe in their prior decisions more strongly than they ought. This is not to say that spending more on marketing is always a bad idea. It is not. The point is that people have a natural tendency to skew in this direction, and if they do err, it tends to be on the side of believing too long in something that was a mistake from the beginning. As we noted a few moments ago, an after-action review is critical to the learning process. Things need to be evaluated for what worked and what didn't work, what could have gone better, and what worked unexpectedly well. This is the critical part of the learning process and the key to designing a learning and adaptive organization, which will be the subject of the next session. it.